And so, yet another entry into the hidden history of the African American fighting man. You do understand that when their Americans are in the military, they become the possession of the United States government, which means that they can conduct experiments on those recruits. And that's exactly what happened in and around World War II. There were, in fact, experiments, particularly on African American soldiers. Now, there were experiments on all soldiers: African American, Caucasian, Puerto Rican, Japanese, particularly as it applied to mustard gas. Well, in 1993, the government decided to declassify information of this very top secret experiment. And it was quite revealing. It showed that particularly African Americans and Puerto Ricans, Japanese, were all tested with mustard gas. According to 93-year-old, where is he, Rollins Edwards, still alive, said they all, by the way, they volunteered. Let me make sure you understand that. They didn't know what they were volunteering for, but they volunteered. Not unusual. So they all go into this chamber, and all of a sudden the gas is pumped in, and then of course there's a reaction. According to the 93-year-old Edwards, it felt like his skin was on fire. Couldn't breathe. He started to holler and so forth, seeking to get the door. Quite serious situation, but it was the government's way of testing. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. All of the ethnicities were in fact tested, and there was testimony given from many, and even now there's some concern because obviously with mustard gas and leukosite, it causes DNA malfunctions, and of course cancer, and a lot of things have been related to this. There are definitely carcinogens in it. Actually, my father even mentioned that he had gone through a similar chamber. Not unusual because there was also one utilized there in Alabama and Louisiana. Nevertheless, here's where it gets a little dicey. All of the ethnicities were being used. According to the papers released and given to National Public Radio, the military wanted to see just what would be the reaction of mustard gas and the like on African American skin, or for that matter, people who are of Japanese descent, Japanese Americans, and even Puerto Ricans, Latinos. But here's why. They wanted to see whether or not the different ethnicities would get the same reaction as their control group. And who was their control group? Well, it was, quote-unquote, white GIs, Caucasian. You see, the Caucasians were used as a control group, meaning they were tested too, and the reaction on Caucasians to mustard gas was considered as normal. You got me? So this is what normally happens, because this is what happens to Caucasians. And now let's test the Negroes and the Latinos and the Filipinos and the Cheerios, all of the O's. And so they did, based on the reaction to the test case. Now, here is why they did. One could argue basically for the information, but according to a rather lengthy report that was done by Susan Smith, medical historian, University of Alberta in Canada, she said the reasons for why the military was testing on the other ethnicities was that they were looking for those soldiers could be a more forward, combat position. In other words, according to her, and I'm reading it, it's pretty extensive, and it lays it out. She even quotes some of the military commanders. There was some suggestions that because there was more melanin in African American skin, that they would be better suited for the front positions. They were testing to see how ideal they were, given the fact that the Caucasian skin did not have melanin, and therefore they were the test, they were the normal, and the reaction to mustard gas was so horrendous. They were hoping that the other ethnicities would fare a whole lot better, and therefore be in the more forward combat positions. Not. Didn't happen. Quite the contrary happened, to be quite frank. Didn't stop the experiments, however. Still, they went on to test African Americans, Latinos, and others on LSD, PCP, and Caucasians. And in each one of those test cases, in all of the test cases, what was considered normal was the effect it had on Caucasians. Now, folks, you got to have a test case, I guess one could argue. It's all part of the experiment. I understand. And in this case, obviously, the military is looking to develop whatever is necessary to win the war, one could argue. However, even to this day, ladies and gentlemen, those men, including 93-year-old Rollins Edwards, has not been given any explanation and or treatment. Even to this day, he still breaks out as a result of that. And so, as you might note, there are those who are pursuing some kind of correction and or lawsuit, and it will probably be at no avail, because when you join the United States military, you are theirs. And by the way, I don't disagree with that. I'll make sure you understand that. All right, folks. This whole thing in Vegas is getting curiouser and curiouser. It really is. Now I understand the girlfriend, who is Filipino/Negro, is back. Come on, bro. The nose, dead giveaway. Dead giveaway. And somewhere down the line, some woman will check her kitchens, and you'll know that definitely that is definitely African American. And for some of my Caucasian listeners who don't know about the kitchens, one of you brothers or sisters, will you tell them about it? Why would you not tell them about the kitchens? That is a surefire giveaway. It works on men and women. You know, I mean, it looks like on the top you might have a Jerry curl, but in the back you've got peas. And that's the kitchen that back there, you know. And you say that primarily because that's usually the part that gets burned when it's trying to be straightened. Yeah, you know where it is. You know where your kitchen is, right there below your hair grows, right where it starts to go from baby hair to nappy hair, right there. It's that baby hair, nappy hair thing. Did you know all baby hair becomes nappy hair sometime as you grow up? All right, let's get to this. Folks, a simple question is this. Here's my simple question. Does gun control work? You know, I think that there are simple answers to complex questions. Does gun control work? Simple. If you think not, go to our Facebook page and explain why. But give me some proof. Give me some proof. Now, folks, let me just tell you this. Look, I'm a gun advocate. I am. And for self-defense, I am. I don't hunt anymore. I don't do any of that. I don't mind telling you that what I have is anti-personnel devices. That's what I have. The reason why I have weapons is to protect myself from another person who has a weapon, more than likely. I'm just telling you, it is not, I'm not using it on armadillo, I'm not hunting, I have rifles like that, but I'm not hunting anymore. So if you're not hunting, and then what you're doing is training to protect yourself against, more than likely, let's see, a deer with a gun. I'm just being facetious. It's time now to stop letting the NRA nut jobs lead you down this primrose path of stupidity. That's why most Americans, that's why there are more guns. We have more guns than we have Americans. Look, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm telling you. I'm okay with it. I mean, it's a pretty fair assessment that if, in fact, you are armed, then more than likely there's a lesser possibility you'll be enslaved. I got it. I'm just not one of those Negroes who pray about it. I just don't. I prepare for it. I mean, and that's just look, folks. I admit I'm no Christian general. I'm a Christian soldier, and so that's just how it works. But be it as it may, can we have a simple, intelligent conversation? You don't have to go off. I won't go off. Simple question is, does it work? Now, the reason why I ask that question, because I can provide proof where it does work. I mean, there are places where there are fewer weapons. I'm just telling you, where there is staunch gun control. I went to a place, just about every place I went, actually, in July of 2016 in Europe, staunch gun control. From London to Paris to Greece, staunch. And guess what? Fewer killings by gun. I would say almost slim to nil in some environments. None. So why are they not having these deaths, Rip? Let's see. Gun control. When I say gun control, it's just as simple as that. It is as simple as that. It's like, they have very stringent gun ownership laws or display laws. They just do. Can you have a gun in London? Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. You can have a gun. But there are restrictions. Very serious restrictions. Now, not to mention countries. Let's just try, let's see, airports. Anybody been shot on a plane lately? Places where they have metal detectors and searching for guns. Superdome. Anybody been shot in there lately? They've got gun control there. Let's just say in any courthouse. Now, can someone try to sneak one in? Oh, yeah, they can. But the point is, where there is gun control, ladies and gentlemen, there's fewer incidents of people being shot. This is not, if you can prove me wrong, prove me wrong. Please tell me. Well, Rip, what happened in Sandy Hook? They have gun control there. Someone had killed all those kids. Yes, in a free society where you don't have gun control, that could happen. But in environments where there are restrictions, there's fewer incidents of that. Well, Rip, they're going to find something else. Now they're throwing acid in the face. Okay, well, fine. We're not talking about acid. We're not even talking about stabbings. What we're talking about is whether or not it works. And I can provide proof. Now, if you want to argue with me, I want you to provide me some proof where you have more guns and there's fewer shootings. Somalia? I don't think so. Chicago? I don't think so. I'll wait. That is my discussion, though. If you're gonna have the argument, then let it be an argument about whether or not it has worked. I've got an ample amount of proof here. I don't want to go through all these countries. So-called civilized countries. There's a huge list. And then not only just the countries. Now that we've got these metal detectors, even nightclubs. When such time you go to a nightclub, and you have to go through the pat down on the metal detectors. Are there fewer shootings? Yes. So it does work. That's a foregone conclusion. Now, once we know it does work, the question is how to work it. We who are gun owners know. We know. This guy had, 42 weapons, not against the law. And any one of those weapons, he could have walked right down Sunset Strip, right down the strip there in Las Vegas. Las Vegas Strip. With the looks on his slung on his shoulder. He could have even had the bump stock, the slide stock, which makes that, as I suggested, it modifies it into an automatic weapon. I think he had an AR-15 and maybe even an AK, which I figured. Before we even knew. Heard that before, that sound before. By the way, they're legal. How dumb can you be, America? You want to start with some kind of gun control, that needs to be illegal. And anyone in the possession of it then should be, it should be relegated as a criminal offense. What? Look, I'm prepared for this argument. I've done a whole lot of homework here. But look, I'm going to apply common sense to this. I'm a avid gun owner. Trust me. And you can't be me and do what I do in this great state of Mississippi and not protect yourself real well. Even then, however, you can be stolen, taken. I mean, really, folks. Most weapons, those who have firearms are typically using it for defense. Even law enforcement, folks. Typically it's for defense. It really should rarely be for offense. When it is for offense and law enforcement use it, they're using it illegal more than likely. There's been a time or two that has happened. That there was this rush to judgment to be more offensive than defensive. That's like, oh, I thought he had a gun. He should have had a gun. I guess what I'm saying here is it's time now for some common sense for those of us who are gun owners, and especially for you guys in law enforcement. Do you understand that this guy had enough? He had the kind of weapons modified to hold off an army. And let me just tell you this, as I brought up law enforcement. This was excellent police work to start with. Curious as to why we're getting all this information now, but I'll talk about that later. But for the officers to go in and breach that door without knowing, let me tell you, that's bravado, first. Secondly, it's good training. I don't know what they're doing in Vegas. I don't know what kind of officers these were. Here's a guy, obviously these guys were privy to the information that there was a security guard who was shot first. Based on what we're hearing, and again, it's unconfirmed, but I've got the pictures here. Here they are here showing the Las Vegas terrorists lying down on the ground there, supposedly dead. But anyway, for these officers to do what they did, really, it was in the time limit they did it. Now we're finding out that approximately 11, maybe 12 minutes, this guy was in his perch, letting it rip. Going through 700 rounds a minute, literally. Whenever he wanted to. Somewhere simultaneously, the security guard comes up, he gets shot. And again, a lot of this, some of the information, even from law enforcement, has been a bit tricky. And I don't know, for whatever reason, they're going to release the information, and sometimes, I don't doubt, sometimes in hopes of finding out whether there's someone else involved. I think others could have known about it. I do. But anyway, for these guys to go up to that door and breach that door, not knowing what's on the other side, is just, in the time that they did it. Now, it took an hour, according to reports I've heard. The sheriff was at Lombardo there. But that's serious. That's serious, right? Here's a guy. The guy had maybe 17, 18. I've heard different numbers. He's got weapons that's been modified into automatic. They didn't know how many people were in that room. With the amount of gunfire, it could have been 5 people in that room. I mean, that's pretty serious. They didn't know whether or not there were some explosives in and around that room. They knew that the security guard was shot through the door. They didn't know. They didn't know whether or not things were booby trapped. Here you are, 32 floors up. The law enforcement who did this without any regard whatsoever for their own safety. Because when they went through that door, that whole thing could have went completely. For a guy to be armed to even be getting the shots like this, automatic shots, imply that you're dealing with someone who has a little bit of experience. Now, of course, I knew that because they weren't short bursts, this guy probably didn't practice much or was not as acquainted with the automatic weapon. That's why I suggested that he was not in the military. Just observations when we were speculating. But, be it as it may, someone who's able to do that, and you charge that breach. I mean, this guy was in an excellent perch here. Nice 2-bedroom suite. Then there was no indication that even he was still in there. Typically, what would happen is that you don't barricade your end, but someone who has some anticipation of getting out with that many arms would basically, would choose at random, choose different locations. In other words, you fire and you move. I mean, you don't stay in one place. You guys who play paintball know that, right? And wherever you're firing from, once you've had that burst and you need to move to another location because someone's going to flank you and you're giving away your position. But the law enforcement didn't know this. They didn't know this. They went up anyway. Very meticulously, very carefully, without knowing, going to the 32nd floor, whether there were some folks on the 31st floor, whether there were folks on the 25th floor, whether or not. I mean, folks, this is serious stuff. Very serious. Now, here's what's going to floor you. Up until that guy broke that window and fired upon those people, he didn't break not one law. Even with the firearms. What I'm hearing now is all of them were acquired legally. The slide stock that converted his AR-15 or the AK into an automatic weapon, all legal. All legal. Good old American boy, gambler. Bought, paid for. Didn't break one law. So when someone says to me, well, Rep, you have gun control, give it all the guns, and only the criminal's going to have guns. This was a law-abiding citizen until he killed 58 people, and then himself. Think about it. Do you really want law-abiding citizens to just arbitrarily have access to a modification? No. I can tell you right now, no. I'd like to have one of those. I don't have them. I didn't trust them. I've seen them, bro. I didn't trust those. That bump stock thing, I know how to work. I know the concept of it. I have talked to individuals who had it jam a time or two because the way it's attached, it just that it automatically, you just keep your finger pulled, it automatically fires is what it's doing. It's a pressure control deal. It's nothing that is attached to the actual weapon that you have. It's just that the trigger is automatically pulled, and when it goes up, it's designed so that automatically when the weapon fires, reloads, slides back, reloads, it automatically comes back just enough and you have just enough pressure for the trigger to be suppressed again. I'm just kind of putting it in layman terms here. I just didn't trust that. You got several different kinds. You got the entire stock, and then you've got the other little attachment. I guess it's not a bad thing to have it if someone is really that scared, or you anticipate killing a bunch of people. It has become more than apparent to me now that there are those out here who don't understand that there was a time, ladies and gentlemen, back in 1960 up till 1960, when there was such a thing as gun registration and there was a better control. Where we saw the great jump in deaths as a result of gunfire was when semi-automatic weapons became more accessible. When of course, it started during the Civil War, but semi-automatic weapons became far more prevalent going into the late 1960s, early 1970s. Up until that time, basically the 45 Smith & Wesson was basically it. The Army issued 45 was these things. You'll find a Luger here and there. But the point is that there is no ifs, ands, or buts about the fact. No ifs, ands, or buts about the fact that gun control works. Now, if you want to prove me wrong, call me, prove me wrong. Give me an environment where gun control didn't work. Didn't work. The American Sniper. Killed by a rifle in the hands of someone who shouldn't have had it. Guy going through PTSD. It was you want to call it a fluke, fine, but the guy didn't have a slingshot. He had a weapon, and thereby he killed the American Sniper. Right? Now, in my view, a person with PTSD would never have been. He would have always been in range for me. You got me? In other words, no, hang on. You got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, I had to stay in range of my daddy. You know, Sandy would say, boy, you got going in front of me. No. Me with my 410. No, he had to always have me in his sights. I probably, he would say, boy, I'm the one that whipped you. You think I'm going to let you get behind me? I'm going to let you flank me? No, I always keep an eye on you. You got a rifle, boy. So it just makes good sense. So anyway, I want to deal with it. I do, and we shall. All right. There's a few other things. I got an obscure story coming out of Georgia. I'm going to share with you once I come back from the break. But I've got to deal with your president and my president. You know, I was watching Vietnam, the series that they have on NPR. Incredible, too, by the way. It is, if you have not watched it, I would highly suggest you watch it. It's not just for, it's not a war story. It is, but it's a cultural, social, political war story. But that series is just incredible. And just by my watching it, it makes me have PTSD almost. I mean, just by watching it, it throws me back into that era, 1960s, 1970s, Vietnam, and the draft and all of that. But it also explains so very much about how war is, in fact, old men lying and young men dying. On both sides. Be it Ho Chi Minh, or be it in this case Kennedy / Johnson. But what's quite telling was the eloquence of both Johnson and Kennedy compared with the president we have now. I have never seen such classlessness, even at a trailer park in McHenry, Mississippi, even more, at a trailer park in Byhalia. I'm just telling you, folks. Where did we get this guy? The guy was actually comparing deaths. You go, well, yeah, we can't do it now. We'll do it on the other side. I mean, it has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with just his inability to have manners. And be human. Really. Everything is about him. And this is the worst of the worst. This is a guy who he's never lost a thing in his life. You know. He's never had any inconvenience. I doubt very seriously he's been very few places, if ever, he's had his lights turned off. Never been without water. Here's a guy who doesn't wear his underwear twice. You know what I mean? I'm just simply saying, that's, look, well, if you're, look, I'm not knocking that. I'm just simply saying it makes it difficult for you to understand the concept of sacrifice. He was asked about sacrifice, and he indicated what he sacrificed, and that was he built a lot of businesses. But for him to sit there and compare deaths, well, I mean, in Katrina you had thousands. Actually, what was it, about 1,800 in and around Katrina? Yeah. over a large range. I mean, we're talking about from Mobile all the way across to Lafayette, Louisiana. And actually, not even that, all the way up north, too, because there was 3 deaths there in North Carolina from Katrina. Yeah, really. But be that as it may, it's just the tactlessness. I mean, how do you turn your mouth to say that in an environment where you have people who've lost everything? I mean, whole houses. We're not talking floods and the water's just sitting there and you go in and gut it out. I'm talking about the destruction I saw there was like the destruction I saw here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Don't confuse that destruction with what was happening in New Orleans. Now, don't get me wrong, New Orleans was serious. But many of the houses that flooded are still there. I know, I have several. They're still there. You had something to work with. But when you come back and nothing is there but a slab, trust me on this, that is a different kind of feeling you get. And you don't compare that. You don't go in and go, well, yeah, well. There's no comparison. There is what happened there and what happened here. And both are horrendous to the people who are enduring it. You don't remind them of, oh, yeah, you should be happy. You only lost 16. Now it's 34 deaths so far in Puerto Rico. I mean, it's so glaringly obvious what this guy's attention is on, is himself. And was he using paper towel, playing paper towel basketball? Paper towels? You know, I'm just, and some of the Puerto Rican leadership there who were there just oohing and eyeing. Well, I don't know. And look, folks, it doesn't mean you have to criticize Donald Trump. It doesn't mean that. But he's certainly worthy of it. I mean, you go there, you say what it is that needs to be done. You hear mostly from the people. You don't sit there and tout, oh, we've done a good job. Yeah, we'll be back. I mean, to tell you, I can't believe anybody who would just sit there and listen to that bullshit. And it was like you had a bunch of, I don't know, for lack of a better way of putting it, Uncle Tom Tom Puerto Ricans. What do you call Tom Toms in Puerto Rico? I don't know. It's just, at some point, somebody's got to say, enough's enough. You know, this guy is like, I don't know. Yeah, this is unplugged, so we cool. This guy's like, yeah. We've done the video thing. I mean, it amazes me. It really does amaze me. All right, we out of here.